Right now on Morning News Now, on the defensive, former President Donald Trump responding to criticism of his visit to Arlington National Cemetery.
Should your campaign have put out those videos and photos?
Well, we have a lot of people. We have people, TikTok people. We're leading the internet.
But on that hallowed ground, should they have put out the images of those?
I don't know what the rules and regulations are.
What he says really happened between a campaign staffer and an Arlington employee in an exclusive interview with NBC News. Plus, Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, sit down for their first joint interview. We'll take you on the campaign trail. Also this morning, summer send-off. Ready or not, Labor Day weekend is here, and millions of Americans are spending this unofficial end of summer taking one last getaway. But could wet weather interrupt your vacation plans? We have a team tracking it all. Plus, a health crisis unfolding in war-torn Gaza. Israel and Hamas agreed to pause the fighting to vaccinate hundreds of thousands of children after a 10-month-old is diagnosed with the enclave's first polio case in more than 2 decades. We'll bring you the latest. And you snooze, you win. You heard that right. Researchers say sleeping in on the weekends could have big benefits for your heart. We'll dive into the data that'll have you diving right back into bed. Doesn't that sound nice? And nice to hear. Sleeping in could actually be good for you in some ways. Good morning. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's on assignment today, so it's just me. We begin this Friday morning with the race for the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris is back in Washington this morning following a 2-day bus tour in Battleground, Georgia. She held a rally yesterday in Savannah where she also gave her first joint interview of the campaign with CNN. It was alongside her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We'll have more on that in just a moment. First, though, let's get to the appearance by former President Trump earlier this week at Arlington National Cemetery. He's defending that to NBC News. He says it wasn't a political stunt and says he was asked for a picture by family members who lost their children in the withdrawal from Afghanistan. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns has this exclusive.
In our exclusive interview, the former president responded for the first time to the controversy surrounding his visit to Arlington National Cemetery. And he also announced a new policy proposal regarding fertility treatments. Former President Donald Trump back in the battleground state of Michigan, making his first public comments about the controversy over his visit to Arlington National Cemetery earlier this week.
I was asked to go there by people who lost their child because of Biden and Harris, because their pullout was so bad of Afghanistan. They lost their child. And all of a sudden I hear that somebody that I have no idea who it is got into an argument with somebody else at the cemetery about pictures being taken. I took them at the request of the families, and I'm very happy I did.
In a statement, an Army spokesperson said that Defense Department regulations, quote, clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds, and that a cemetery employee was, quote, abruptly pushed aside when trying to ensure adherence to those rules.
We lost 13 great people.
The campaign on Tuesday posting this TikTok, highlighting video of Trump's visit, laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, then posing among grave sites with family of service members killed in the attack at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan. Should your campaign have put out those videos and photos?
Well, we have a lot of people. We have people, TikTok people. We're leading the internet.
But on that hallowed ground, should they have put out the images of those?
I don't know what the rules and regulations are. I don't know who did it. And it could have been them. It could have been the parents. It could have been somebody.
It was your campaign's TikTok, though, that put out this video.
I really don't know anything about it. All I do is I stood there and I said, if you'd like to have a picture, we can have a picture.
The former president also reflecting on the assassination attempt against him in Butler, Pennsylvania. I wonder, having come so close, do you feel safe these days?
It was incredible that happened, that I was turned at that particular point, where something, the shooters would say it was like almost 100% that bad things would have happened. So I view it as, a very positive event. Maybe it's positive because somebody wants me to take care of our country, which is failing so badly.
The former president also suggesting first to NBC News if he were reelected, fertility treatments would be covered without giving specifics on how.
Under the Trump administration, we are going to be paying for that treatment. So we are paying for that treatment.
All Americans who want it?
For all Americans that get it, all Americans that need it.
We did the math. That kind of plan would likely cost around $7.8 billion annually based on the number of IVF cycles in 2022. Meanwhile, the Harris campaign is responding, saying in a statement, in part, because Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, IVF is already under attack.
All right, Dasha, thank you very much for that exclusive. Now let's get to that first joint interview of the campaign for the Democratic ticket of Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Harris and Walz sat down for the interview yesterday with CNN while they were wrapping up a two-day bus tour in Georgia, culminating with a rally in the city of Savannah. In the highly anticipated interview, Harris was pressed about her policies and what a Harris presidency could potentially look like. Here are some of the highlights.
If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
The idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me.
I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
What I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any
same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
For more on the Harris interview, let's now bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, good morning. Thank you very much for being up early with us on a Friday. So let's start there with the Democrats. What are we hearing from them this morning? We finally get this interview with the Democratic ticket. Was the interview enough to address concerns from voters who feel they really haven't heard enough on specific issues, on specific policies from Harris or Walz?
Yes, and candidly, I actually think a lot of this has been a little bit overblown. As someone a reporter who does campaigns, who covers Capitol Hill, you always want to be able to ask principal and elected officials questions about policy, about whatever's going on in the news of day. Yes, to always doing more interviews for that reason. But this idea that she didn't have policy herself, to me, was always a little bit overblown, in large part because as the second half of the Biden-Harris administration, her name is on all of the policy innately that was passed over the first 2 years of this administration. That was the Inflation Reduction Act. That was elements of the care economy. That was a child tax credit that, of course, has since elapsed, but is very much still, as you heard again in that interview, back on the table. And then, of course, we are aware of the strong stance and the leadership, frankly, that she has shown within this administration on things like access to abortion care. That is one of the top issues. And then, of course, as someone who followed her on the campaign trail in 2019 and into the administration in 2020, the other piece of this that I was interested in hearing about is the ways in which her platform has changed. And I think that is a fair criticism because she has backtracked on things like initially saying she would ban fracking as a presidential candidate herself, and then, of course, joining the Biden ticket in 2020 and saying in that vice presidential debate that she had reversed her position there. She explained some of those changes as not an evolution of values, but an evolution of receiving more information and seeing that there might be other ways to get to the ultimate policy goals that she felt were necessary. But all in all, the goal here was do no harm and start doing these interviews. That was clearly achieved.
Ali, you, of course, are a Capitol Hill expert, and I'm wondering how it's feeling on the Hill in terms of what we're seeing happen with polling here, with Vice President Harris rising in the polls, in some cases surpassing the former president. Is there concern with ranks of Republicans on the Hill who have their own re-election races to run? Never mind looking at the White House, but do they feel that this potential shift, at least in some places in momentum, could be difficult for them to overcome as well?
Covering Capitol Hill these last few months has really been just vibe tracking, to put it plainly.
Yeah,
you have watched
that.
Democrats get as low as they can possibly get in the month of July during that tumultuous period after the June debate, where there was obviously open question about whether or not Biden could continue as the nominee. Some of the conversations I was having with my Democratic lawmaker sources then were some of the most glum I have had ever. Of course, that has rebounded and then some. When you see the glee at the top of the roller coaster, if we're watching it go like this, you see the glee at the Democratic National Convention. That then has an impact on Republicans. And I do think that there is concern among Republican frontliners in the same way we were hearing it around Democrats and frontline members who were worried about keeping their seats or their potential to flip Republican districts blue. That is definitely a concern now that we're hearing from some Republicans. We'll wait, of course, until they get back to town in about a week and a half to actually see how that's manifesting. But look, Congress doesn't actually have much to do in the month of September. They, of course, have the big task of funding the government, which should be easy, but isn't always. We expect them to pass some kind of continuing resolution into next year. And then their goal is to get out of town and get back on the campaign trail in their own districts. That's when we're going to see the impact of this top of the ticket on further down ballot races.
Allie, it was just 2 years ago you wrote your book. It's called Electable: Why America Hasn't Put a Woman in the White House Yet. There's its beautiful cover. How is this going? I mean, like, we're at this point, your book focused on these hurdles that women are facing while they're running for office. We're at this point with Vice President Kamala Harris now being the candidate. That was not always the case, of course. It was pretty recently that she became the nominee, that we even knew that was going to be the path we're on. What's your takeaway of where we're at right now, specifically just when it comes to the challenges that you know, that you researched, that you put out there in this fabulous book for us, that a woman faces uniquely?
First of all, this book was working overtime on the crystal ball because that subtitle makes me look brilliant right now. And then also the fact that the 2-year publication anniversary was the day after Kamala Harris's DNC acceptance speech. I don't know that we could have planned it any better than that, because we didn't. No one knew that this is how it was going to go down. But look, that book actually focuses on the hurdles that people, including then Senator Harris, faced as a candidate. And I think the biggest difference right now, and I wrote about this for NBC in the immediate aftermath of Harris becoming at least the presumed nominee, if not officially so, is the fact that the gender and race dynamics that so often cut against non-white and non-male candidates are really focused on the primary. It's where it impedes their ability to get top staff, build campaigns on massive amounts of money. It's where the most benefit of the doubt is given to male candidates. Harris, because of the unlikely way that she got this nomination, didn't have to go through a primary for that. In a general, voters will likely just vote with the candidate that they most align with in terms of a national political party. She's building a different coalition. They're focusing on trying to pull white women, other different pieces of that. But for Harris, this is uncharted territory and potentially historic, even though she's not talking about that.
And if you haven't read Ali Vitale's book yet, now is a great time. I promise it is a fabulous primer as we head into these next couple months. Ali Vitale, thank you very much. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Well, Labor Day weekend officially here. Can you believe it? Airports across the U.S. are bracing for what's said to be a historic number of travelers. Today alone, TSA expects to screen nearly 3 million passengers, according to the travel site Hopper. The top 3 busiest airports, they're going to be Atlanta, Chicago, and Dallas-Fort Worth. But the travel blitz isn't exclusive to airports. Millions of Americans are also expected to hit the road and drive to their weekend destinations. Let's bring in AAA spokesperson Aixa Diaz, who has some important travel tips for anyone who is heading out this weekend, which I'm sure are quite a few of you listening right now. Aixa, always great to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with just what people should think about as they're heading out. Maybe let's start with driving. People driving to those weekend destinations. I'm always gaming. I do often drive places from New York City on a weekend like this. I'm always trying to game what's the best time to leave. What do you think? What is the best time to head out today and throughout the weekend, maybe also on that Monday traveling back?
Well, Savannah, people should really be heading out soonish, like before 11 a.m. So definitely around this time, because the longer you wait today to hit the road, the more congestion you're going to find. That 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. window in the afternoon is just brutal, because not only do you have travelers hitting the road, but also just commuters, people getting off work, or a lot of families and students. Many kids are back at school, so you've got that traffic to think about as well. So if you're hitting the road, try to leave as early as possible today. And then if you're leaving tomorrow, Saturday, Saturday, that actually might be more beneficial to leave a little bit later in the day. Usually we don't advise afternoon driving, but because so many people have to work today, Friday, that means that tomorrow they're going to hit the road early. So more people are likely then to be on the road in the morning. So you might want to head out a little bit later.
AAA also says it expects to rescue 300,000 stranded drivers over the course of the holiday weekend. What's that about? Why that number? And what can people do to avoid having any of that car trouble?
And the top three reasons, Savannah, are flat tires, dead batteries, and people locking themselves out, which is the worst. But it happens, and AAA will come help you if that does happen. The best thing you can do proactively is get your car checked sooner rather than later. Don't wait until like a few minutes before you hit the road to do that. Check your battery, check your oil, check your tire pressure. That way, if those things are not in order, you have time to get your car maintained and then hit the road. And have a spare set of keys. Not many people do that, but it's actually not bad to think about, especially if you have another passenger with you in the vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. Split them up, but take them both. Let's say the unfortunate does happen and you do get stranded. One of those things happens to you. What should people do?
Well, if you're on the road, especially if you're on a busy highway, you want to find a safe place to stop, preferably the nearest exit. But if you can't make it to an exit, pull over on the side of the road as far over as possible away from traffic. Not only do we see drivers and motorists themselves get injured on the side of the road, but we have way too many tow providers hit and killed on the side of the road because everything's happening so close. So, and as a driver, you need to slow down and move over when that does happen. Put your hazards on. And then also, if you're going to call AAA, for example, you can call or use the digital, use a digital mode, either the app or online. But also, if you have one of the newer iPhones, 14 and 15, and you don't have any cell service and you find yourself off the grid, you can call AAA and use the satellite with your iPhone to call for roadside assistance, which is huge.
Oh, wow. That's great to know. Really good tips there. Let's also talk gas prices. Can drivers expect relief when it comes to that compared to last year?
That is good news. So we're paying about 50 cents less this Labor Day than we were last year. And they've come down about 15 cents just in the past month. So the national average this morning is $3.35. So we are trending downward. We're watching the tropics, though, a couple of systems that could affect the Atlantic or the Gulf Coast. If that happens, that's when we tend to see gas prices go up a little bit if a storm affects refineries in the Gulf Coast. So this is, we're approaching the peak hurricane season. So this is the time when we're watching that. But so far, gas prices are actually lower than they were last year, and they've been trending downward for weeks now.
Yeah, wow, 50 cents less. That's a pretty big deal. Also, you guys have some data. AAA has some data. It shows overall domestic travel. It's up 9% this year compared to last year. But also, I thought this was interesting. More people are opting to get travel insurance. Given the surge in travel, why is that a good idea? Honestly, I think a lot of times I check the no box, but why should you do this or not?
And a lot of people do. And I think the pandemic really taught a lot of people a lesson. And sort of they learned from that and saw, okay, plans can change, people get sick, things happen. So they want to protect their investment, particularly when it's a big trip. So maybe you don't want to do it if it's a weekend, a quick trip to see your friends, a couple of nights. But when we're talking about a cruise vacation or an international vacation, and those have been very popular post-pandemic, that's when it's a good idea to protect that investment, because you never know what's going to happen. There's going to be a trip interruption. There's going to be a cancellations due to weather or some computer glitch at the airport. So that's why more people now are thinking, okay, I want to protect the money that I put into it. But domestic travel is up 9% this Labor Day weekend because the cost to travel domestically is actually down 2% compared to last year. So it's a little bit more affordable. And so many people want to squeeze in that last hurrah of the summer. So it's not a surprise that more people are traveling this year over Labor Day, but international travel has come down a bit. And that's because the cost to travel internationally has gone up 11% compared to last Labor Day.
Wow, that certainly feels true every time you try to look at those flights. Aixa Diaz, thank you so much. Great to see you. Happy Labor Day.
Thanks.
Speaking of Labor Day, let's get a look at your holiday weekend forecast. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us with the details on this one. Michelle, great to have you here. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Great to see you. And unfortunately, some of us will need the umbrella as we head out the next couple of days. Starting today on to kick off our holiday weekend, we are looking at a lot of showers and storms, or at least a chance of them. Not widespread, not all day, but still look at all this green showing up on the map. That's indicating the chance for spotty showers and storms. And any of these showers could drop a lot of rain in a short amount of time. We're going to see rain falling along the Gulf Coast over the next several days. So we have a flood threat today, tomorrow, and then into Sunday as well, even Monday. Strong storms in portions of the Great Lakes, especially in southeastern Michigan. Back behind this front that's causing all these issues, we're looking at really dry conditions throughout the central and northern plains. Lots of sunshine. Temperatures not bad in the low 80s. And then further back to the west, we're heating up once again in the Pacific Northwest, the Intermountain West. Temperatures will start to climb, and we're looking at still a lot of sunshine. That's going to help to heat things up. So that is for today. Again, here's that cold front that's going to cause all the problems. We're going to see showers and storms along this cold front and ahead of it over the next several days as it kind of makes its way across the east. We have the threat for some strong wind, some hail, some flash flooding, not only today, but throughout the weekend as well. So that's going to cause some problems in the air. Likely causes where we're likely delays where you see the red here in Detroit, St. Louis, Houston, and then possible delays for Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta, Orlando, Tampa, Dallas, Fort Worth. So a lot of hubs, major hubs, could see some impacts as we go throughout this Friday. And then Monday we'll have some problems as well. If you're on the roadways, I mentioned the Gulf Coast and all that rain that will be falling. So along I-10 across the Gulf Coast from Houston to Pensacola, could see some slowdowns as well. I-44 into the Great Lakes, I-55, we're looking at the chance for those showers and storms. Now, as we head towards Monday, the unofficial end of summer, we're looking at a holiday washout across the south and also the southeast. Localized flash flooding as well. This is the same front and kind of gets hung up here, especially in the south. So we're going to see that rain falling along this front, and we're going to see it kind of going over the same areas. And it's going to be, you'll need the umbrella that day, maybe kind of plan for those indoor activities. Possible delays in terms of air travel on Monday in Dallas, New Orleans, Charlotte, Atlanta, Orlando. And then we're looking at likely delays in Houston and also Tampa. So plan for that as you head out on Monday. As far as the roads go, we're looking at I-10 once again, and I-95 in the southeast. We're looking at the chance for scattered showers and storms. Let's talk about that severe weather today, because we do have 5 million people at risk, especially from the Great Lakes throughout the Ohio Valley. We're looking at Detroit. You will be impacted by the chance for some strong to severe storms, especially once we get that daytime heating going. So winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail. Could see a brief tornado or two, so you want to stay weather aware today. That will be the same story tomorrow. Look how that number grows to 27 million, because now we're talking about the interior parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic down to parts of the Tennessee Valley as well. We're going to see the same scenarios, really gusty winds that could cause some damage, some hail as well, and the low risk for tornadoes, but not zero. On top of that, we are worried about flash flooding because it is summertime. We have lots of moisture here, so we could see some flash flooding anywhere from the Great Lakes all the way down to the south. This is so important to be weather aware, especially on the holiday, a little bit more lackadaisical, but we're going to have some issues out there.
Really important reminders to stay safe. Yeah. Michelle, thank you so much. We'll see you in a little bit. Welcome back. Let's get you the latest out of the Middle East. The World Health Organization says Israel and Hamas have agreed to 3-day pauses in fighting across parts of Gaza to allow 640,000 children to receive the polio vaccination. This is all expected to start this Sunday. Just yesterday, our NBC News team inside Gaza met the first child to be diagnosed with the disease in the area in 25 years. Now, despite receiving medical care, the 10-month-old became paralyzed. An official for the WHO welcomed the agreement, but said the limited pauses might not be enough time to vaccinate everyone.
We call on all parties to pause, of course, the fighting to allow children and families to safely access health facilities and community health outreach workers to get the children who cannot access health facilities for polio vaccination. The 3 days might not be enough to achieve adequate vaccination. So we will monitor it throughout the campaign.
NBC News International correspondent Matt Bradley joins us from Tel Aviv. Matt, thanks for being here. So first, let's just start this fact. The Israeli government seems to be going out of its way to note that this is not the first step to a ceasefire. These 3-day pauses in fighting is not the same, or is not that road to a negotiation there. So walk us through what it is and how this came to be.
Yeah, so this is a 3-day pause, as you mentioned, but it's going to be pauses in different parts of the Gaza Strip for each day. So it's going to be probably about a couple of hours every day during the daytime, during daylight hours, where there will be pauses in separate parts. So in the north, in the center, and in the south of the Gaza Strip. So kind of a rolling 3-day thing. This agreement would then offer the option for a 4th day if it's needed. So this is really necessary because, as you mentioned, we've seen our first infant who has polio, and that's a very big risk because this is a highly infectious disease. Health authorities say that they need to get the vaccination rate up to about 90% in order to prevent the spread of this disease any further. But really, when we're talking about the spread of polio, this is because of infected water, because of malnutrition, all things that are afflicting the Gaza Strip because of the ongoing fighting. Savannah.
Matt, outside of Gaza, tell us the latest on those deadly Israeli raids in the occupied West Bank.
Yeah, well, this is now in its 3rd day. This is a sprawling operation, and we're seeing now about 17 people have been killed. Those numbers are expected to rise. The IDF have said that they've wrapped up their operation in the Al Farah refugee camp, and they've also wrapped it up just now. We just heard in the past hour or two in the city of Tulkarm. It looks as though that operation is still going on in Jenin. But as we've reported before, this is the largest incursion into the West Bank by the IDF, possibly in the last 2 decades, ever since the Second Intifada. So this really is a big operation. And like I said, looking at those pictures, seeing the earth movers, seeing the armored vehicles and the columns of Israeli infantry moving in there, we really can expect that those death toll is probably going to be increasing over the coming days.
Matt Bradley, thank you, as always, for your reporting. Stay safe. This week, the Biden administration says it will restart an immigration program for migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua after it paused it back in July due to fraud concerns. Here to tell us more is NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, good morning. So first, just remind us how this immigration program works and why it was paused initially. What were those fraud concerns?
Well, this was supposed to be a way for people from those countries that you just mentioned to apply to come to the U.S. legally from their home countries rather than come to the border illegally. It was a common sense approach, and it was introduced at a time where the Biden administration also said that those same nationalities could also be pushed back into Mexico when they approach the border illegally to the tune of $30,000 a month. But what happened over time is that they needed a U.S.-based sponsor, and they did an internal report this spring and found that there were only 3,200 sponsors sponsoring over 100,000 migrants. They called them serial sponsors. We actually got a look at that internal report at NBC News, and it showed things, Savannah, like 600 migrants listing one address in a commercial warehouse in Orlando by their sponsors. Sponsors who said that there would be over 700 migrants living in a dilapidated trailer park in Key West, Florida. A lot of this centering around Florida, actually. So we're also able to look at the Social Security numbers that these sponsors put down because they had to prove that they could legally live in the United States in order to support these migrants. In many cases, in hundreds of cases, they would put down one number 9 times, like all 5s, all 6s. And a lot of those people were still confirmed to come into the United States. So after this internal review, they started looking at those red flagged cases. And here's the thing, Savannah, they have not finished reviewing it, but they do still have those red flags on hold, the ones that they have not finished reviewing. They're putting in more precautions. They say they're going to start vetting these people more carefully. They're going to flag serial sponsors, that they'll turn anyone over to investigation that they think might be in violation of immigration fraud. But still, it's hard to imagine that they've actually finished learning all those lessons if they haven't gone through all of the applications. Although I think a big reason they want to turn this back on is because the numbers are so low at the southern border, and they're worried that if they don't continue to allow these legal pathways, those numbers could come back up.
Julia, I think even the way that you just put that learning lesson, some of it almost sounds like, is it really a lesson? Or how is it possible that you think about something like, why are you asking for a Social Security number if you could do something like write all 5s? I mean, that just is not even sensical, right? So what are they changing that is going to make this make sense or make it, I guess, ensured that this actually is being checked? Because I think if you were to just read that one metric that you just said there, that one piece of an application, you could see this is not a legitimate application. So how are they going to go about this differently?
Well, the biggest changes are going to start to ask for fingerprints from the sponsors. And so you would think that, every person only has one fingerprint. That would be hard to fudge that. And they also say that they're going to start to manually vet these in smaller batches, which might beg the question, how did they vet them before? Was it a machine rubber stamping them if so many people were able to get through? But they do say that they're going to look at it, but they haven't changed the numbers. They also haven't said what's the limit. As long as a sponsor can show that they could financially support the number of migrants on their application, they can submit as many applications as they want. There's no limit. Another thing, no matter what side of the issue you're on, even if you think these people should come here or not, usually when you see so few people sponsoring so many migrants, you have to start asking, could this be human trafficking? And it's not clear that they've launched enough investigations to figure out if they can rule that out yet or not.
Julia, you, of course, are one of the smartest reporters when it comes to immigration policy and understanding exactly what is and what is not happening when there's a lot of noise around a topic like this. To my ears, though, when you hear something like 3,200 sponsors only for 100,000 or more migrants, kind of what you just mentioned there, the possibility of human trafficking, or at the very least, I think pretty obviously, some type of loophole here where it may not be physically illegally crossing the border, but using a program like this to get in, even though it's clearly not being done the correct way. With as many concerns as you just laid out, what's your take on is this ready to be restarted?
I think, I'm not in a policy position. I'm very glad that I get to just, critique people in power rather than actually make these decisions myself. But yes, I do think that there is a big push, especially given the fact that we've got an election coming up, that the Biden administration can take a hit on this while still keeping those numbers low at the border. And they would be really worried, particularly when you're talking about these 4 nationalities, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Those are all countries that do not typically take back migrants that the U.S. tries to deport. So they really want to keep those numbers down at the border, and they want to keep them to a legal pathway open for them to try to keep down the numbers coming at the border, because those 4 nationalities at the border, since they started this program and that they've put in place a lot of other programs like asylum restrictions in June, those 4 nationalities have dropped by 98% at the border. So they really see this as a critical piece of it. I will say also on this human trafficking element, while I don't think they've ruled that out, they are going to try to refer more people for criminal prosecution if they advertise these sponsor services on Facebook. That's something that we saw evidence of in the very early months of this program, Savannah. They say that they are not allowed to sell these sponsor services online, and they worry that if they do so, that could be a way to try to prey on some of these very vulnerable people who are desperate to get into the United States.
All right, Julia, as always, great reporting. Thank you so much. Coming up, campus controversy when we come back. Major developments in the fight over college legacy admissions as lawmakers in one state vote to ban the practice. Plus, if you're thinking about sleeping in tomorrow, here's your sign. Do it. New research that shows hitting the snooze button is good for your heart. Stay with us. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. As students return to college for the fall semester, there's a debate over the admissions process that got some of them into their schools. Just this week, California lawmakers voted to ban legacy admissions at private universities. The governor now has until the end of September to sign it into law. It comes after critics of legacy admissions have argued it gives preferential treatment for wealthier and mostly white students. They say it's not all that different from affirmative action, which was struck down by the Supreme Court last year. NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis has reaction from students and their families.
Shockwaves sent through college campuses when the Supreme Court overturned affirmative action in admissions decisions.
A cultural crossroad.
For Jonathan Lamb, a student at Cornell University, the admissions process wasn't easy.
As a child of Vietnamese refugees, I came into the application process with limited resources.
He thinks affirmative action was important for his acceptance to an Ivy League.
I don't think I was solely accepted based off affirmative action. However, affirmative action, I think, in considering not just my race, but also the systemic barriers that I face, I think that helped Cornell at least acknowledge what are the resources that I need to thrive.
After the Supreme Court's decision, Jonathan, along with Cornell's ACLU chapter, started lobbying New York lawmakers, taking aim at another practice they believe is more perverse: legacy admissions.
If the Supreme Court is arguing that no student should receive any preference because of their race in the admissions process, no one should be receiving a admissions consideration simply because their mom and their dad attended that school.
Critics have called legacy admissions unfair, even discriminatory, because the students that benefit typically come from wealthier backgrounds and parents who give money. Roughly 30% of institutions nationwide consider legacy status, according to advocacy group Education Reform Now. While states like Virginia, Colorado, and Maryland have prohibited the practice, leaders in states like California are still working towards an official ban, as is New York State, where over 40% of institutions consider legacy status.
Why should we allow preferences to, increase the opposite of diversity, giving kids who were born with a silver spoon on their mouth more access to opportunity?
One study finds 1 in 6 students at Ivy League schools have parents in the top 1% of income, a group that's overwhelmingly white, with legacy status playing a big part too. But of course, not every Ivy League graduate is white.
If my children also work hard and are qualified to go, then yes, the school should look at them in the same way that they've been looking at the children of alums for generations.
Nick Childs, a Yale University alumnus, wanted his daughter to go to the same school, even though she wouldn't look like the typical student there or the average legacy applicant.
I was hopeful that she'd feel a little bit more accepted there than I did like almost 40 years ago.
As the top schools across the country have gotten more diverse over decades, Nick believes the combination of ending legacy admissions and affirmative action will negatively impact people of color disproportionately. His daughter Mari did end up going to Yale and is now in medical school.
As more Black students have been able to go to that school, more Black legacies are kind of created.
It's not like this turnkey where you end legacy admissions and now we have a fair admissions process.
Our thanks to Rahima Ellis for that report, a nuanced and important one. Well, it seems like forever, right, that we've been told you can't catch up on missed sleep. Well, it might not be entirely true. We have a sleep study to tell you about that shows you might be able to pay off some of your sleep debt on the weekends. It's a new report from China's key laboratory of infectious diseases, and it found that people who got the most sleep on the weekend were 19% less likely to develop heart disease. That was compared with a group who slept the fewest extra hours those 2 days. For more on this, let's bring in Dr. Jay Wu. She is a board-certified behavioral sleep medicine specialist and a licensed clinical psychologist, also the author of the book, Hello Sleep. Good morning, Dr. Wu. Thank you very much for joining us. Walk us through what this study found. What is the connection between extra sleep, specifically on the weekend, and heart health?
So this study followed over 90,000 people over the course of 14 years. So it's a really huge and well done study. And what they found was that of the subset of people who were sleep deprived on a daily basis, they were more likely to have a healthier heart 14 years later if they caught up on sleep on the weekends compared to the people who did not catch up at all. But this is only for the about 20% of the study that actually were sleep deprived on a daily basis.
Were there limitations in this study? Talk to us about that and how it means that we should think about and interpret this information.
Well, the problem with talking about sleep deprivation with such a broad stroke is that sleep deprivation is not the same for everybody. For some people, 7 hours is very sleep deprived because they need 10. But for some people, 7 hours is perfectly adequate. So I don't want this study result to make people anxious that, they're only sleeping 7 hours. That means they must be damaging their heart health. We need to know that our sleep need is very individual and changes over the course of a lifetime.
The way that I frame this at the top, I guess maybe I should ask you, is it correct to kind of say, to take the takeaway, I think is what we're doing here, right? That something positive could come from adding those extra hours when you are able to get it. I think whether that's a Saturday or a Tuesday, it just depends on what works for your schedule. But if that ultimately is something positive for your heart, it kind of does mean that there is an impact there, that maybe you are able to pay off a sleep debt a little bit.
A little bit. I would say it's certainly better than not paying off that debt. But a better way to do it, obviously, would be to get enough sleep every day. That would be the ideal. And if you're not able to because of family obligations or work, I would say I would rather have people nap in the middle of the day on weekend. catch up on sleep rather than sleeping in really late in the morning. Because if you get up at very different times on weekdays versus weekends, you have what's called social jet lag. And social jet lag is basically your body's almost undergoing jet lag and, experiencing those detriments. If you're waking up at 6 on weekdays and 9 on weekends, it's like you're flying from New York to Los Angeles and back every weekend. So, of course, that's not good for your health and not good for your heart health either.
Wow, that is a really fascinating way to put it. As somebody who does have to fly around quite a bit for work, I know that feeling, and that's not good. And I totally do that hangover thing because I get up so early for work during the weekend. I'm just simply not going to get up that early if I don't have to on the weekends. But it's interesting to think about. What advice do you have for people to, like, good sleep, hygiene, get that best sleep they can?
The best thing to do is to keep a consistent schedule if you can. So that means waking up within about an hour's range between weekdays and weekends. And if you really can't do that, then try your best to get good anchor sleep. So that means a good solid few hours that are the same time across different days of the week, if you're, for example, a shift worker. And also another kind of underrated sleep tip is what you do during the day, which is to get a lot of light exposure, because our body clocks really like to know the difference between day and night. So if we can get lots of light exposure during the day and not too much light exposure from screens at night, then there's that nice contrast between day and night. And then our brains are happier with our circadian rhythms, and then we can sleep better and feel better during the day.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Dr. Wu, thank you very much. I learned a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Coming up, rideshare drivers being accused of discrimination after blind passengers report they're being denied rides. More on the issue that's now getting federal attention. That's next on Morning News Now. We are back now with an investigation looking into rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft. Across the country, people who are blind are reporting drivers are illegally denying them rides because they don't want their dogs in their cars. As Candace Wynn from our NBC Bay Area affiliate tells us, it's caught the Justice Department's attention.
As a special ed teacher in San Jose, California, Annalisa DiLeonardo gets to school a little differently.
Find the curb.
Through the eyes of guide dog Cousteau.
He is literally my eyes. Without him, several times I would have been a pancake.
Cousteau gets Annalisa safely to a curb each day to catch a ride share, if they can find a driver who will take them.
I don't think a dog is me.
He's a service dog.
No, that's good. Thank you.
He is a working service dog.
Yeah, but I don't have any.
Okay, but it's against Lyft's policy to refuse him. You have to take him.
I know, but I mean, I'm not allowed about pets.
He's not a pet. He is like a wheelchair. Anytime they break the law is when we start recording.
Those refusals, not just impolite, but illegal. A violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and against the company policies of both Uber and Lyft. And yet this summer, Annalisa has captured the offenses weekly on cell phone video.
I don't want to mess up my car.
It says, why aren't you taking me?
Oh, I don't want to mess up my car.
It's a service, though. It's a Lyft. You have to.
On a human level, what does it feel like?
Like I'm less than and I'm not wanted in society.
In 2016, Uber and then Lyft the next year settled lawsuits by the National Federation of the Blind and promised to crack down on drivers. But with the issue persisting years later, the U.S. Justice Department is now getting involved. NBC News has confirmed through a source with the department and Christine Benninger with the nonprofit Guide Dogs for the Blind.
Actually, things have gotten worse. We get phone calls on a daily basis.
Benninger says the DOJ's Civil Rights Division is collecting data on these refusals. Her own organization's findings show 83% of clients report being denied rides.
A number of clients are actually evaluating whether they would get another guide dog again. The sad part about that is the guide dog is much more than purely safe travel. It's your bridge to the community.
Uber told us we have a clear policy prohibiting drivers denying service because of a rider's service animal, and it can take appropriate action, which may include deactivation of a driver's account. Lyft said it requires all drivers to accommodate passengers traveling with service animals, and it asks riders to report issues immediately. But Annalisa says filing reports with the two companies leads to little more than the drivers getting a warning.
And then I usually get a $5 gift card. And so sometimes I've just stopped reporting.
It's a service dog.
Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry.
Despite the frustration, Annalisa is a teacher first, hoping this story serves as an important lesson.
I'm the same as you and I deserve the same rights, and I just want to get to work.
Good job. Candace Wen, NBC News, San Jose, California.
Let's get you some financial news. Google is toying with some new AI technology that can sniff out when you're sick. CNBC's Savannah Henao joins us with that and other financial news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Happy Friday to you. So Google is working on AI technology that can hear signs of sickness. Bloomberg says Google has trained its AI model with 300 million pieces of audio that include coughing, sniffles, and heavier breathing to predict early signs of diseases such as tuberculosis. Now, it's teamed up with an Indian startup to put that tech in smartphones, where it could potentially help high-risk populations in areas with poor access to health care. The world's largest streaming site for pirated movies and TV shows has been shut down. ACE, or the Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment, that's a coalition of studios and entertainment companies, is taking credit for helping police in Vietnam dismantle F movies. It launched in 2016, and the site had almost 7 billion visits over the past year and a half. F Movies even had a subreddit where users could request and share links to content. ACE calls the shutdown a victory for the industry across the globe. And we're wishing Warren Buffett a happy 94th birthday. The legendary investor got an early present on Wednesday when Berkshire Hathaway topped $1 trillion in market cap. It's now one of 7 U.S. companies in that club and the only non-tech stock. Now, Berkshire has been on a roll with shares up nearly 30% in the past year. Savannah.
All right, Savannah, thank you so much.
You got it.
Well, coming up, upset at the U.S. Open, a shocking round 2 defeat for tennis star Carlos Alcaraz. Plus, Naomi Osaka crashing out after making her big comeback win. We'll have all the highlights next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. We're going to end the hour with a look at a big night of some serious upsets at the U.S. Open. Reigning Wimbledon champion and fan favorite Carlos Alcaraz suffered a stunning second-round defeat, while on the women's side, Naomi Osaka also crashed out of the tournament as she looks to regain her footing on the court after coming off maternity leave. Let's serve up some analysis with Hall of Fame tennis coach, motivational speaker, author, and, of course, our friend of the show, Rick Macy. Good morning, Rick. It's always wonderful to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start off with Carlos Alcaraz. Oh, my goodness. He ended up losing 3 straight sets to an unranked opponent. I couldn't believe this. I'm wondering, we heard he was injured in practice. Like, did that have anything to do with this? What's your take here? How big of a deal is this?
Well, first off, there goes my prediction, because I thought he'd win the whole thing, but it's a big shocker. He lost to the guy from the Netherlands. He's 74 in the world. Okay, but what's crazy about this, he's only 11-28 for the year. So a little Dutch magic on the Spanish magician, but it just goes to show you, tennis is a game of inches from one ear to another. So whether the ankle came into play, who knows? But he was very inconsistent. But moving on to the next guy, Novak Djokovic, he's usually the one giving out the heat, but the other day, the heat got to him. Okay, he was hanging out more with the physio and the ice and stretching. So, but being the GOAT, he persevered, he pulled through it, he's on to the third round. Just like Sinner, okay, he struggled the first set, with the doping controversy. Once he got on track, and then he won in 4. The next round, he won in 3. He's into the third round. But on the men's side, okay, the popcorn match coming up in the third round with extra butter is Ben Shelton, the Florida Gator, with the 150-mile-an-hour serve. That sometimes you see it later, and he'll be playing Francis Tiafoe. The 2 Americans, must-see TV. And another big upset was Herkhoff. He lost, okay, and so he's out of the tournament also.
And also Osaka, another kind of surprise, or at least I think a lot of people were really cheering her on, watching her come back. Tell us your reaction to that one.
Yeah, not surprising. You know, she beat Ostapenko the first round. She knocked out the seed. She had a brutal draw. She played Karolina Mahova, who was actually 8th in the world at one time. And in my opinion, one of the most talented players on the tour. It's a tough matchup, but Mahova is good enough to win the whole thing. Remember, it's a slow process to come back. Naomi's doing great, but she had a very difficult draw. But Mahova is to be reckoned with. She has all the shots, and she's the best volleyer on the Pro Tour.
You know who I'm super excited about, Rick, and I was lucky enough to see on a pretty small court, little court 17, I went the other day, Caroline Wozniacki. I just love watching her come back, and she's looked so strong.
Yeah, it's amazing. They take time off and they come back, you know. But listen, she has the legs. She's consistent, but nothing takes the place of experience. Experience is a leader in the clubhouse, you know, and she's always been a fitness fanatic. So listen, she's a tough customer for anybody, and she could definitely make a deep run.
We only have a few seconds left, but tell us, what is the biggest matchups you're looking to see between today and tomorrow?
I would think it'd be the two Americans, you know, just because whoever wins that match between Shelton and Tiafoe, everybody's looking at this, Savannah, very differently. Alcaraz out the door, you know, and they're thinking, why not me? So maybe we can have an American win this thing, the first time since Andy Roddick, one of my old students.
Well, I know. I love that. So cool. You're right. Why not me? It's so exciting. I'll be there tomorrow night. I can't wait to see Rick Macy. Thank you so much. Always great to have you. We'll keep chatting through this.
All right. Good to be with you.
See you soon. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Let's start with good news. It's Friday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's on assignment today. Right now on Morning News Now, summer's last hurrah. Labor Day weekend is officially here. And if you're traveling in the next day or two, I've got 3 words for you. Pack your patience. Millions of Americans are set to take to the highways and runways for one last getaway before temperatures drop. So what can you expect when you head out the door? We have got you covered coming up. In the race for the White House this morning, a pivotal primetime conversation with Vice President Kamala Harris, her first since becoming the Democratic nominee. What we're learning about her potential policies if her ticket to the White House gets punched in November. This as former President Trump reveals his support for free IVF treatments if he returns to the Oval Office. Plus, it's a different type of getaway for your holiday weekend, why hotel day passes are now booming in popularity and how you can take advantage of staying local as summer winds down. And later in the hour, a deep dive into the Lord of the Rings return to the streaming screen, how fans are reacting to season 2 of The Rings of Power and everything else from the world of entertainment that you simply can't miss this Labor Day weekend. One of our favorite segments, everything you got to watch, especially when you got an extra day off. We're going to start this hour, though, at that end of summer travel blitz. Labor Day weekend is here, and TSA predicts it will be the busiest travel season on record for U.S. airports. Today alone, the agency plans to screen nearly 3 million passengers. And if you're flying in or out of Chicago, brace yourself. O'Hare International is on track to be the second busiest airport this weekend, according to the travel site Hopper. And that is where we find NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster. Shaq, good morning.
Hi there. Well, certainly a lot of activity here at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Already seeing some long lines, some stressed out passengers. Chicago's airports are expecting about a 9% increase in passengers this holiday period when compared to last year as this Labor Day travel crunch begins.
This morning, the holiday travel rush is on, with millions of Americans heading out to celebrate the final stretch of summer.
Scotland,
Norfolk, Virginia,
and LA.
Airfares down slightly this year, and travelers are taking off at a record pace this Labor Day weekend.
Trying to get away from Jersey for a little bit.
Atlanta is expected to be the busiest airport, according to Hopper data, with more than 9,000 flights departing and 1.1 million seats scheduled. In second place, Chicago's O'Hare.
Are you a little stressed right now?
A little stressed. It looks like the security lines might be a little longer than we would like.
And there's been some early headaches already, with extreme weather across the country potentially impacting the Labor Day travel rush. tornadoes touching down in the Midwest, causing extensive damage, ripping trees from the ground in Minnesota and knocking out power for thousands. The Dakotas also hit hard by 5 reported twisters, throwing these freight cars off the tracks in North Dakota. On the East Coast, golf ball-sized hail pounding Virginia. In Palm Beach, a glitch in the baggage handling system forcing crew members to load luggage onto planes manually, causing multiple flight delays.
It is what it is, I guess. As long as we get there safe, I'm okay.
The TSA says it's staffed to ensure the quickest wait times for the 17 million passengers expected to be screened at security checkpoints through next Wednesday. But it's still best to plan ahead.
So you don't want to be surprised when you get here and cut it close or miss your flight. Definitely do your homework and give yourself a lot of extra time.
Certainly good advice to follow. And remember, so many of the delays that you see during the holiday period happen before you even arrive here to the airport. And that's why airport officials are advising that passengers consider taking public transportation on the way to the airport. That will certainly help you avoid some of the congestion that you see at the airport drop-off locations. Back to you.
All right, Shaq, thank you so much. Well, this record-breaking end to the summer travel season, not just limited to the airports, like where we just saw Shaq. Millions of Americans are also expected to hit the road. AAA says overall domestic travel for Labor Day is up 9% this year compared to last year. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar is live at a rest stop near Atlanta. Priya, good morning. Okay, we also know Atlanta, I think, is going to be the #1 airport in terms of busyness today, right before Chicago, where we just saw Shaq. But what's the traffic like there so far this morning, and what can travelers expect throughout the country throughout the day?
Absolutely, Savannah. Two of the things that Atlanta is very well known for is the world's busiest airport, but we also have some of the worst traffic congestion in general, and that's expected to be even worse, of course, because of the Labor Day weekend. You know, a lot of families are choosing regional road trips instead of going to the airport and flying somewhere because the kids are back in school, so they need to stay a little bit closer to home. Right now, things aren't looking too bad just yet. It's hard to really differentiate between the general morning traffic commute and what could be attributed to the actual extended long weekend, but we expect that the traffic is just going to continue to get worse throughout the day, with the time period between 2 and 6 p.m. today expected to be the absolute worst. And of course, the variable factor that we never know that could contribute to all of the traffic would be the weather, which can create some accidents in certain areas. So certainly something to keep an eye out for, Savannah.
Priya, what do experts recommend for people to make their road trips as stress-free as possible? It might not always be possible, but what can we try to do?
So the most important thing I would say is to be strategic about what time you plan to hit the road. If you're planning on going somewhere today, the best time to do so would be before noon. The only exception to that rule would be tomorrow on Saturday. If you're planning on leaving on Saturday, it's actually better to do that in the afternoon. And if you're planning on returning home on Sunday or Monday, try to leave earlier. That's the best case scenario to avoid those afternoon traffic jams. AAA also says that they actually expect to rescue 300,000 stranded motorists over this long weekend. And they say the top 3 reasons for that are flat tires, lockouts, and also dead car batteries. So it's important to try to get your car inspected as close as you possibly can to a longer road trip. And also, if you can, try to keep an extra set of keys perhaps in your purse or your fanny pack so you can avoid one of those lockouts, Savannah.
Yeah, separate the two, though, right? Give them to one for the driver, one for a passenger. What about gas prices? I think we've got some good news here, right?
That's absolutely right. So gas prices have actually been steadily decreasing. The average price per gallon right now nationwide is at $3.36, which is down 14 cents from last month and actually down 46 cents from this time last year. And even better news for motorists is those prices are actually expected to continue to decline until the end of the year, which is, you know, pretty exciting and good when we keep talking about the price of everything else going up. This is the one sweet spot for people who are looking to go on a road trip, Savannah.
All right, Priya, thank you so much. Well, let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman. She's going to let us know how the weather is going to impact our travel as well as our holiday weekend. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, Savannah. Great to see you. And Priya mentioned it. The wild card is the weather. And unfortunately, many along the East Coast, or at least the eastern half of the nation, will be seeing the chance for showers and also some storms. This is what radar looks like right now. You can see where that cold front is. It's stretching from the Great Lakes all the way down to the southwest. We have showers and storms along that front, and we're going going to see that move off to the east over the next several days. Also, a batch of moisture down across the Gulf Coast states. This is going to stay in place not only today, but Saturday, Sunday, into Monday. So that's going to really impact your holiday weekend. We have a little area of low pressure bringing us those showers and storms, but moving off the coast of the Northeast. So that's good news. But still, we do have the threat for a shower or storm there as well. This is what today shapes up to be as we head towards the west. We're heating up. We're going to see temperatures rising in the Pacific Northwest into the Intermountain West, but lots of sunshine too in the Intermountain West and Northern Plains, the Upper Midwest into the Central Plains. It's this dividing line, though, this front that will divide that really nice weather with the weather where you're going to need that umbrella. So we're seeing lots of green here on the map that's indicating where we could see those spotty showers or storms, and any of these storms could drop a lot of moisture. So we will see some flooding conditions as well, and could see some gusty thunderstorms as well, especially in the northern tier of the nation along the Great Lakes, southeastern Michigan. The bullseye, we're seeing some of those stronger storms. Could see some gusty winds, some hail with any of those storms. Then as we look towards Saturday, still looking really nice and dry in the Central Plains and Northern Plains, the Intermountain West. Back to the west, toasty though. Notice 101 in parts of the west. We're going to see temperatures into the 90s, upper 90s in some spots. Then we head further to the east. This is where the problem spots are going to be once again on Saturday. So not a great beach day or lake day for many of us. We're looking at the interior parts of the Northeast, New England, down through the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, into the south central states. And there is that flood threat once again along the Gulf Coast. We're going to pull up some tropical moisture, and we're going to see a lot of rain in a short amount of time for many days to come. Sunday still looking good at west. In the middle of the country, too, plenty of sunshine in the northern plains, the central plains staying dry in the west. Just toasty once again. We are wet in the south all the way to the Tennessee Valley once again. This is the same front that's sort of going to get hung up. It's going to stall, kind of sit in place, and it's going to bring the chance for those showers. The southeast and Florida, we could see some showers, too. And then along the east coast here. So now we're talking about New Jersey into New England. We're looking still at the chance of some showers. Monday, this is the unofficial end of summer, and it looks pretty much the same. So not much is changing over these next 3 to 4 days. Above average in the Northwest, still dry throughout the middle of the country. We're drying out in the Great Lakes. We're drying out into portions of the Northeast and also the Mid-Atlantic. And we're going to see a fall preview on Monday. So we're going to feel like temperatures are going to be in the 70s. So feeling a little fall-like as we end up this weekend, but still that weekend washout along the Gulf Coast. Notice still those brighter colors showing up. That's where we're going to see those heaviest rains falling, and we are concerned of some rainfall, maybe up to 7 inches in some spots. Let's talk about the severe weather threat today, because we have 5 million people at risk, especially along the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, where you see that yellow. Detroit, you may be impacted by some strong storms. That means you could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. That is enough to bring down trees and power lines, causing some power outages. Could see some hail as well. A brief tornado is possible. We've seen some tornadoes over the past few days, so we will be watching for that. They will be isolated. That number grows to 27 million people tomorrow. We're talking about portions of the Northeast into the Mid-Atlantic and some major cities there. So Philadelphia, D.C. could see some storms tomorrow with kind of the same scenarios with hail and also some damaging winds.
So not what we want to hear over a holiday weekend. Yeah. All right.
Could be better.
Yeah. Michelle, thank you, and enjoy the weekend.
You too.
Well, with less than 10 weeks to go now until Election Day, Vice President Harris just sat down for her first major interview since becoming the Democratic nominee. Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, of course her running mate, spoke yesterday with CNN in Georgia for their first joint interview as the Democratic ticket. During the interview, she discussed her policy proposals and defended some of her policy reversals. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now with the highlights. Hey, Gabe, good morning.
Hey there, Savannah. Good morning. Vice President Harris had been under mounting pressure to take detailed questions. And overnight, in that interview with CNN, she tried to strike a balance between defending the Biden-Harris administration's legacy while charting her own path.
Overnight, in her first extensive interview since President Biden dropped out of the race, Vice President Kamala Harris defending some of her shifting policy positions since she last ran for the White House in 2019.
I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
On immigration, she was pressed about a 2019 primary debate where she raised her hand when asked whether the border should be decriminalized.
Do you still believe that? I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally.
She was also asked about her past positions on banning fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. Joe Biden will not ban fracking. I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
Harris, who also rallied supporters in Savannah, Georgia, is touting proposals to extend a child tax credit and give $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. So why didn't she take those steps during her first 3.5 years in office?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%.
She also brushed off former President Trump questioning her racial identity last month.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, saying he misspoke when he said he carried weapons in war during his time in the Army National Guard, despite never being deployed in combat.
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English she told my grammar is not always correct.
Harris also describing for the first time publicly how she found out President Biden was dropping out of the race.
The phone rang and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes.
Harris says that if she's elected, she'd appoint a Republican to her cabinet because she wants to have different views at the table. Overnight, former President Trump responded to the interview on social media, writing that it was boring and that Harris rambled incoherent. Savannah.
Okay, Gabe, thank you very much. Let's talk more about former President Trump now. He's heading to Johnstown, Pennsylvania this afternoon, just outside of Pittsburgh, for a campaign rally. Well, he campaigned yesterday in battleground Michigan, and in an exclusive interview with NBC News, Mr. Trump unexpectedly proposed covering fertility treatments. He also defended his recent visit to Arlington National Cemetery. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns is traveling with the former president, and she got that interview. She joins us now from Lansing, Michigan, with more on this. Dasha, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. That's right. The former president making headlines about the issue of reproductive rights in our interview. This as Vice President Kamala Harris is shown ahead significantly with female voters in recent polling.
Former President Donald Trump courting voters in the Midwest Thursday, including key battleground states Michigan and Wisconsin. Mr. Trump revealing a new policy proposal in an interview with NBC News, pledging that during his second term, the popular and pricey fertility treatment IVF would be free.
So we are paying for that treatment.
All Americans who want it?
For all Americans that get it. All Americans that need it. So we're going to be paying for that treatment, or we're going to be mandating that the insurance company pay.
The former president not providing specifics about how the procedure, which costs about $20,000 per cycle, would be paid for. A massive health care expense after Mr. Trump and congressional Republicans tried multiple times to repeal the Affordable Care Act in his first term. It's also unclear how Mr. Trump plans to vote on a proposal to overturn the 6-week abortion ban in his home state of Florida.
How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time.
The Harris campaign responding, there's only one candidate in this race who trusts women and will protect our freedom to make our own health care decisions. Mr. Trump also defending his campaign's recent conduct at Arlington National Cemetery in his first public comments since the controversial visit to pay his respects to service members killed during the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
I was asked to go there by people who lost their child. They asked me whether or not I would stand for a picture at the grave of their loved one who should not have died.
The Army says a cemetery employee was, quote, abruptly pushed aside when they tried to enforce Defense Department regulations, which, quote, clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds. The Trump campaign later posting video of the visit.
On that hallowed ground, should they have put out the images of those?
I don't know what the rules and regulations are. I don't know who did it.
It was your campaign's TikTok, though, that put out the video.
I really don't know anything about it. All I do is I stood there and I said, if you'd like to have a picture, we can have a picture.
And Savannah, those comments on abortion that you heard, they're getting some backlash from some parts of Mr. Trump's base. Overnight, the campaign looking to clarify, telling us in a statement, President Trump has not yet said how he will vote on the ballot initiative in Florida. He simply reiterated that he believes 6 weeks is too short. Savannah?
Tasha Burns, thank you very much, and great interview. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the investigation that's now underway into the death of a top Ukrainian fighter pilot whose F-16 crashed earlier this week. We'll bring you what we know. First, though, the ongoing legal back and forth over where accused University of Idaho killer Bryan Kohberger will stand trial. The difficult decision now facing the judge. We're going to break it all down up next. We are back with the latest on the ongoing legal battle to get the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students before a jury. Bryan Kohberger and his lawyers were back in court yesterday requesting a change of venue for his murder trial. His defense team argued that the intense media coverage would prevent him from having an unbiased jury. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin joins us now with more here. Dana, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Bryan Kohberger, along with family members of the victims, were in the courtroom as the judge heard arguments from prosecutors and the defense on where this trial should take place. Kohberger's lawyers outlining why they believe any jury pool in Moscow is already tainted.
I would say this is probably professionally the most difficult decision I've ever had to make.
In their final plea to get the trial relocated, Bryan Kohberger's defense made their argument clear.
Mr. Kohberger has a constitutional right to a fair trial by an impartial jury. And to guarantee that, this court must change venue.
A judge has entered a not guilty plea on behalf of Kohberger, the accused killer of 4 University of Idaho students, who sat in the courtroom on Thursday as his lawyers called for the trial to be moved from Latah County, where the killings took place, to Boise in Ada County, where the population and potential jury pool is more than 10 times larger. The defense called multiple expert witnesses who say news stories about the case oversaturated the community.
Do you mean that when we walk into trial and the room's full of potential jurors, there's going to be a great majority of them that before we sit down are going to have a feeling of bias against Mr. Kohberger? Yeah, I do.
Defense witnesses also testified statements from local law enforcement may have a stronger sway on Moscow residents and convince them of Kohberger's guilt, pointing to our interview with then Police Chief James Fry after the defendant's arrest. Are there any other suspects, or are you 100% certain this is your guy?
I am certain this is our guy.
No doubts?
No doubts.
But prosecutors pushed back.
The fact is, Your Honor, this case has media coverage everywhere,
saying they are confident they can find and seat an impartial jury.
Latah County might be close-knit, but it is not a tiny little community. It is not so tiny that we could not summons in a jury of 1,800.
That argument echoed by the victims' families, who say they also want the trial to stay in Moscow.
I trust this community to be fair and to go in there without their minds made up, and I don't think that's asking them too much.
Now the fate of the case in the hands of the judge as pressure mounts for the trial to move forward. And Savannah, we are still awaiting a decision from that judge. As you heard, he called this the most difficult decision he has ever had to make, adding he has some, quote, really important things to think about from both sides. Savannah.
All right, Dana, thank you very much. NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Sanadella joins us now for more on this. Angela, good morning. So, most difficult decision, he's saying, really, for him to make right now. What is it that he's weighing? That piece did a very good job of giving us all the facts, but just take us inside those chambers. What is it that he's looking on? It's kind of a T-chart here.
Right, so he's really looking at the Constitution, and that's where the tension starts. So obviously, defendant has a right to a fair and impartial jury, which is what you heard the defense attorney arguing here. But also in that same Constitution, it says that the location should be where the crime happened. That's how it's always been interpreted. So that community also has a right there to hold that trial where it is. The prosecutors have a right to hold that trial there. So the question here is not just, was there a lot of pretrial publicity like the defense is claiming? It's, does that pretrial publicity make it totally impossible? Now, look, most of the case law on this comes from like the 1960s, before the internet, before digital dissemination of information. And it's almost been like since then, the Supreme Court has said, look, whatever decision this judge makes is the one that'll stand. Judges here have almost total discretion to weigh whether or not the impartiality would be impossible, because ultimately it's an art, it's not a science, Savannah.
I guess I also look at the inverse of that question. Not only would impartiality be impossible, but is impartiality possible anywhere? I mean, I'm nowhere near Idaho, and I feel like I know every detail of this case. Does moving it really make any difference?
So that's exactly what the prosecution is arguing here, that in this digital age, it is almost impossible to have one community that is isolated from this publicity. Also, the prosecution had an interesting interpretation of the survey that the defense presented, and they said that just because the pretrial publicity is greater, they believe the survey results showed that it actually had, the more exposure you had, the less likely you were to judge Kohberger. So they're saying the question here is not just how much publicity, but is that really then turning the potential jury against Kohberger?
Why is it that a prosecution, in this case or any other, cares? Why, if they think they've got the evidence, they've got enough, why does it matter who is going to be sitting on that jury?
So what they're saying here is really the victims and the witnesses, the victim's family, that it's a huge inconvenience. This trial is supposed to take 3 months, Savannah. So having witnesses and families travel hundreds of miles on a daily basis for that period of time is a huge inconvenience. And in addition to that, there will inevitably be delays if it's moved. And as you know, that's what the defense has largely been doing, asking for more and more delay. So the prosecution is saying we just want to try this man right now and get justice.
Well, this has come up in lots of high-profile cases, right? I believe this is something that came up in a case that's kind of risen its head again, as we've seen lots of documentaries recently come out about the Scott Peterson case and the murder of Lacey Peterson, his wife, and his unborn son. What often happens here? Like, what do we have to look to in examples of a judge making a decision to grant something like this?
Okay, so baseline, it's almost impossible to ever get a change of venue granted. It is a motion that is brought up with some frequency because often the defendant's attorneys want to say that this defense needs a fair trial above all. And obviously that is very important in our Constitution. But the Supreme Court case that I was talking about earlier that really says judges have ultimate discretion here had to do with Enron, where there the judge did not move the case, even though the pretrial publicity was so extensive in Houston. And there, at that point, the Supreme Court said, look, judges can decide, because also it's the resources of that community that matter. Now the prosecution, if it is moved, is going to have to spend a fair amount more time, energy, and money moving that trial elsewhere.
That's a really good and interesting point. So what comes next? Do we know when the judge makes the decision? Does he have to by a certain point?
There's no deadline, but likely it'll be soon, given that all the evidence and the hearing happened just recently. But the issue is that, you know, this was an enormous amount of evidence that was presented. Usually it's not that much. Usually it's a pretty quick motion that's been made. But hearing all of this evidence, the judge is going to have to go through it piece by piece and see not only is there pretrial publicity, but was there enough factual evidence presented that would show that this is going to be a biased pool? And, of course, you only need X number of jurors, right? You don't need, you know, thousands of jurors. You only need 12.
Yeah. Angela Sonadella, fascinating conversation before this has even gotten underway. I'm sure we'll be talking about it so much more. Thank you. We always appreciate you coming by. Let's turn now to some international news. And the Ukrainian military says one of its F-16 fighter pilots was killed while responding to a Russian attack earlier this week. It comes as Ukrainian troops push deeper into Russia following their surprise ground invasion earlier this month. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin joins us now from Kyiv on this. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. There are lots of questions about that F-16 crash. This is what we know. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, a noted Ukrainian jet fighter pilot was flying that F-16 through Ukrainian airspace, responding to that massive Russian missile strike that happened in Ukraine on Monday. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, he had shot down 3 missiles and a drone, was on his way to the next target when they lost connectivity to him. His jet crashed and he died. The cause is now under investigation.
The Ukrainian Air Force announced a newly arrived F-16 fighter jet crashed during the massive Russian missile attack on Monday, killing top Ukrainian pilot Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Mess. Known by his call sign Moonfish, he spoke to NBC News months into the war.
It was the most intense at the very first couple of days.
The cause of the crash is under investigation as the deadly game of who blinks first continues, with Russia gaining ground in Ukraine's east, while Ukraine takes more land in the Russian region of Kursk.
The Russian border is a straight shot that way.
This week, we visited the Ukrainian city of Sumy, less than 20 miles from the Russian border. Now the staging ground for Ukraine's historic invasion. Putin has said Russia has no borders. This Ukrainian officer says, now we've shown we can enter Russian territory. We spoke with a Ukrainian commander inside Russia. NBC News is withholding his name at the military's request for security purposes.
Are you gaining ground?
Yes, little by little, he says. He tells us they've been given strict instructions as to how to interact with Russian civilians. We were told to help them as much as we can, he says.
Every 2 hours, you hear some explosions.
Across Sumy, resident Irina Olyanitska says she wants more help from the West.
The support should be stronger. You make negotiations with Russians today, they're gonna kill you tomorrow.
A senior Western intelligence official tells me so far there is no sign of a major Russian troop movement from Ukraine's Donbass to Kursk to try and reclaim Russian territory. And I was speaking to a Ukrainian military analyst who was telling me that the longer they let this go, the longer period of time that the Ukrainians have to sort of dig into Kursk, the more difficult it's going to be for Russian forces to take back their own territory. Savannah.
All right, Erin, thank you very much. As always, stay safe. Coming up, a Labor Day health threat that could really pour some cold water on these holiday weekend celebrations across America. After the break, what you need to know about those dangerous, in some cases even deadly, mosquito-borne illnesses that are plaguing the country and how you can keep your family safe. That's next on Morning News Now. We're back with news of a major crime bust. Federal authorities are now charging a group of suspects who say they are responsible for over 100 burglaries and thefts across the country, allegedly employing thieves visiting from South America who had short-term visas. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson has the story.
The alleged masterminds behind a multi-million-dollar crime tourism ring that targeted cities across the country, charged by federal authorities.
This group essentially acted as a linchpin for South American crime tourists who wanted to come to our country, take advantage of our liberties to steal from the American people.
Officials say Juan Carlos Tola Duran and his girlfriend Ana Maria Arriagada operated a sort of criminal concierge service out of their Los Angeles rental car business.
Tola has been running, in essence, the Hertz rental car business for thieves.
The couple and 4 alleged conspirators accused of providing nice cars to thieves from South America who were in the U.S. on short-term tourist visas, allowing them to blend in as they targeted high-end homes and businesses from New Jersey to Kansas to California, according to the indictment. Even stealing victims' bank cards, which officials say they would then max out at nearby superstores. They purchased gift cards, electronics, and luxury goods to sell back at a fraction of the value to Tola Duran, who then resold the goods for profit, bringing in over $5 million across 6 years.
The defendants acted essentially as quarterbacks for a massive team of eager thieves.
This is Tola Duran and Arriagada's home, according to the indictment. One neighbor recalls police searching the property.
I just pulled up to a lot of commotion and a lot of vehicles and vehicles on trailers. That's really scary. Really scary. No wonder there was so much activity.
The stolen funds, secured from at least 120 burglaries and thefts in 80 different cities, according to the indictment, would go towards buying real estate and even horses.
Since 2019, I'm proud to say that we have arrested over 130 suspects responsible for perpetrating these crimes, with a vast majority using vehicles from Driver Power Network.
Crime tourism is proven to be a serious issue in the U.S., especially in Southern California. Last year, officials sounding the alarm over Chilean criminal gangs who took advantage of a 90-day visa program that allowed them to enter the country with no criminal background check. Those gangs connected to a string of burglaries across Southern California.
Those thinking they can come to our country, take advantage of our liberties, and steal from the American people should think again.
Our thanks to Steve Patterson for that report. Well, before you head off to a Labor Day weekend, hopefully full of barbecues and block parties, there are some new warnings this morning about those dangerous mosquito-borne viruses and how to keep your family safe outdoors. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us from Chicago with what you need to look out for. Maggie, I am tossing to you right now while I am itching myself because I am covered in bug bites, and this is really scaring me. What do we need to know?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We just sprayed, or I should say soaked ourselves with DEET to kind of try to avoid the same thing. I completely feel your pain. But I mean, seriously, looking at mosquitoes in the outdoors headed into the long holiday weekend, experts are stressing safety, stressing that bug spray, because we now actually, not to freak you out more, Savannah, but we have 2 more deaths linked to West Nile virus, this time in Wisconsin. And at the same time, the father of a teenager paralyzed by that virus says he believes the threat is a lot closer to home than people even realize. This morning, heading into the long holiday weekend, there are new concerns buzzing for those eager to soak up the final days of summer outside.
We've had a lot of extra rain, so there's a lot of mosquitoes around.
Rare but potentially deadly mosquito-borne illnesses continue to plague parts of the country.
It's crazy, just you're sitting on like my back porch for 10 minutes and then I go back inside and I've got like 10 bites.
Wisconsin officials announcing 2 deaths linked to West Nile virus, making for nearly 24 deaths nationwide, with nearly 300 cases reported in 33 states. And now there's a 6th case of Eastern equine encephalitis, or triple E, the virus found in 5 states that's killed 1 man.
I think it's going to be a significant concern in the future.
Cities taking action, spraying neighborhoods to help protect residents. For those heading to a lake for Labor Day, be on high alert. Mosquitoes look for still, fresh water, and be sure to apply a DEET-based insect repellent on top of your sunscreen. In Missouri, John Proctor wishes his family had known about the danger of mosquito-borne illnesses sooner. His 18-year-old son, known as BB, has a long road to recovery. He's on a ventilator, paralyzed from the neck down after contracting West Nile virus from a mosquito bite his dad believes he got while playing with their dog in the backyard.
It's hard to fathom how such a small, insignificant creature can take a perfectly 100% healthy human being and it just causing havoc on his body that fast. It only takes one mosquito to get you.
Yeah, we just hurt for that family. So again, stressing this is rare, but in BB's case, doctors say he could make a full recovery, according to the family, and they're hopeful, but they were also told it could take up to a year or more. So that in mind, a little advice from experts to help protect the smallest members of your household. They say you can use bug spray on kids, but they say apply it to your hands and then apply that to them. That's a bit safer. And then when it comes to animals, you can also protect them, but you should use bug spray formulated especially for animals. But Savannah, your toss to me is just freaking me out. So now I'm doing this again.
No, I know.
Here I go again.
All of it.
Can't use enough.
I have a lot of bug bites. I'm checking my dog constantly for ticks. I mean, it's really important information though, Maggie, and really, really good tip there. I had no idea about applying it to your own hands and then onto a child. That's great. Maggie, thank you so much. Stay bug-free as much as you can. Coming up, your next big getaway doesn't have to be thousands of miles away from home. After the break, why so-called daycations are having a moment. So you hit a local hotel for the amenities, but not for the overnight stay. We'll explain up next. We are back now with a look at how you can plan a getaway without actually getting away. While millions of people are vacationing this Labor Day weekend, others are opting for daycations. That's where you get a day pass You get access to luxury hotel amenities without any of the travel, and you don't even stay overnight. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has been looking into this, and he joins us in studio to tell us all about it. Hey, Sam, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Yeah, it's like a slice of vacation. It's perfect, and it's one of those ideas where it's genius. Why did I not think of this? For years, most of us have used hotels as obviously a place to sleep overnight. But after spending our waking hours sightseeing or dining out in different cities, that's what you do when you're vacationing. But what about all of those lightly used hotel swimming pools and luxury spas, the gyms? Who's using it? Well, enter the daycation, which has exploded in popularity in recent years. You've no doubt heard of a staycation. But what is a daycation?
You can book amenities at hotels and only go for the day, so you don't have to pay for the room.
The leisure option is really starting to pick up steam. How would you define this concept to people?
Yeah, I think it's reinventing the way we think about hotels. So you're not staying overnight, but you can use all the amenities, things like pools, cabanas, spa, fitness, wellness, even the rooms just for the day.
According to a recent survey, 60% of travelers were willing to pay for day passes at a 5-star hotel in order to use its amenities without actually staying overnight. Resort Pass pioneered the idea about 8 years ago, but the company's CEO, Michael Wolf, says its popularity has skyrocketed in the last couple of years. With around 1,600 partner hotels in 250 cities, and 7 out of 10 packages, from pools to spas, are under $65.
So Miami is actually our biggest market. Phoenix is an incredibly big market. New York, Orlando, Hawaii.
But even in pricey cities like New York, we found some day passers atop the Virgin Hotel pool deck digging the deal. How much did you guys pay for this?
We paid $80 each for a day bed, which is really rare in the city. I mean, I've been to other pools where they charge like $250 for a day bed.
At the Virgin Hotel, the options range.
So you can book one of the loungers, which are single. You can book a day bed. And we do have another option, which is our cabana.
But one thing is clear. On a random Tuesday, the pool is packed.
If you want to work from the pool, if family, everybody can take advantage of this.
They definitely are. From Brooklyn, where the Arlo Williamsburg offers rooftop poolside service, to the Arizona Biltmore, which has water slides, the Ritz-Carlton Miami and its heated pool, and the stunning Fairmont Orchid in Hawaii. All of these places, the face of hoteling in the future. Where do you see this in 5 years?
We're truly just getting started. We're just at the beginning stages of what that means for the hospitality industry.
Okay, this is pretty cool, but also if you're somebody who's paying a lot, let's say, you just mentioned the Ritz there, to stay somewhere like the Ritz, are you suddenly, your pool's way more crowded? Is it tougher to get service? Like, what's it like for the people who are actually staying?
No, it's such a great question, Savannah, and it is also specific by city. So if you're talking about like Central Florida, for example, Orlando, very popular, there's not that many people necessarily at any given day in the summer that are occupying the pool. You're not going to run into a numbers crunch. New York is different. LA is different. Some of those cities that are a little bit more premium in terms of the spacing.
Right.
And so you have a scenario where they cap the number of day passes that they'll sell. We were obviously at the Virgin Hotel there. They sold out that day. They are not going to flood the grounds with people coming in. They want to try to keep a nice balance between guests that are already there and those that want to use it as a day pass. And like the options are really cool. You know, you have spa and pool. You can do a packaging together. Some folks also wondering about rooms if you want to go change. That's an option in some of the hotels as well. My favorite part about this, I saw all these young people there. I was like, hey, can I talk to you about day pass? Like, I'd love to, but I'm supposed to be at work right now. So like, don't worry, man. It's work from pool, WFP. Yeah. You're good to go. Bosses will totally understand.
Work from pool.
It's a new thing.
Sam Brock, thank you so much. Very cool. And actually, you're going to stick around to help me trash talk our friend Jesse Kirsch. That'll make sense in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Let's get you some money news, though. First, a federal judge has denied a request to dismiss a lawsuit brought by X, formerly known as Twitter, against nonprofit watchdog Media Matters. CNBC's Silvana Henao is with us with that and more. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Yes, so a judge in Texas has ruled against Media Matters' request to dismiss a lawsuit filed by X. The social media platform filed a suit last year after Media Matters published a report showing hateful content was appearing next to online ads from companies such as Apple and Disney. Now, those companies then paused their ad campaigns. Attorneys for X claim the report was intentionally deceptive and financially hurt the company. Gas prices have been falling ahead of Labor Day, the traditional end of the summer driving season. The average price for regular is $3.35 a gallon. That's down down nearly 15 cents from a month ago. But analysts aren't ruling out the risk of a spike. They say OPEC could extend production cuts beyond October 1st, which could tighten oil supplies and lead to higher gas prices. We're also still in hurricane season, and the Gulf of Mexico accounts for 15% of the nation's oil production and nearly half of refining capacity. And Krispy Kreme has a sweet deal to mark the unofficial end of summer. Customers can get a dozen original glazed donuts for $2 with the purchase of any regular dozen at regular prices all Labor Day weekend long. It's part of Krispy Kreme's Go for Two promotion, which encourages football fans to earn extra points as they take in week 1 of the college football season. Savannah.
Well, Silvana, that is a perfect segue to our next story. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So a sure sign that fall is right around the corner is college football is back. Last night, my Colorado Buffs held off the North Dakota State Bison 31-26. It was a great game. So exciting. Well, fans can expect some big changes, though, to the game ahead of this season. That includes a new playoff system that will now allow 12 teams to fight for the championship instead of just the 4 we've seen previously. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kurse joins us with a look at what's to come. Hey, Jesse, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. That expanded playoff means more opportunity, also potentially more controversy. One of the changes we're going to see this year right here in Dallas on SMU's campus. Take a look at this. The Mustangs now part of the ACC. This is one of just several conference realignments that are reshaping the fabric of college football.
This morning, the tailgates, the mascots, and of course, the kickoffs are back in a big way with the official return of college football.
Football's back. Football is back.
But this season comes with lots of big changes. The college football playoff is expanding from just 4 teams to 12. That means more schools have a fighting chance to compete for a national championship.
Now it matters what seed everybody is. It matters if you're 8 versus 9, because that's the difference between hosting a playoff game in the first round or not.
And even months before bowl season, we'll see new matchups due to big conference realignments. The iconic Pac-12 once Rose Bowl regulars, but now that conference is effectively gone, with all but 2 schools fleeing to the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12. Those cherished regional rivalries with more than 100 years of history are now mostly gone, with schools now playing against teams they historically have not faced.
We're going to miss the traditions that it had. But, you know, it also creates an opportunity of making new traditions.
It also means athletes and their families will travel farther across the country. Look at the Golden Bears' schedule. They fly from the Bay Area to Alabama, Florida, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. But entering these powerhouse conferences means new opportunities, more money, and more potential to attract top players.
We really need to be one of those top 4 conferences to be able to say and attract the elite level student athletes who want to test themselves and compete against the best in the country.
Oklahoma State's football players will even have QR codes on their helmets, linking to a fund that helps student athletes cash in on their name, image, and likeness. A new season full of changes, marking a new era of college football.
Savannah, we have to take care of something out. I appreciate you letting Sam stick around. So
here we go.
I was going to try to kick a field goal from around here. He was saying this is so short, this isn't even the extra point.
That's
I know
3 yards.
I'm a big enough person to know when I was wrong.
enough.
I was wrong. That's where they snap from, so it gets taken from further back. But why don't we back it up some more? 10 good? No, 10's not good enough? All right, we're going to go to the 15-yard line. 15 plus another 10. That's 25 yards.
Okay.
Is that enough for you, Sam, if I make this?
Sam, you got to add the 10 yards, obviously, for the end zone, too. So that's like, what, a 30-yard field goal? Let's see what you got, Jesse. Hope you don't miss.
Oh! It went through! Doesn't have to be pretty.
Did that
as
make
long
it?
as you win the game.
Did that look to you like it cleared the crossbars?
Let me tell you something. Sam, it's too early for
you
trash
so
talk.
deserve that.
Go back to sleep, Mr. Brock. Savannah, back to you.
Oh, actually, Jesse, before we let you go, I am going to do something kind of mean, and I'm gonna roll the tape.
Don't do it.
I'm going to roll the tape.
Don't do it.
Let's go.
You can't just let me have this moment.
Okay.
Look at this. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
And me laughing hysterically, being so cruel.
This poor guy, man.
That was an air ball.
I feel so much better
Jesse
about myself.
Sorry, I don't know why we just decided to pull that up on you. It's just like, hey, you know what?
He's a good sport, to be honest with you, Jesse. You are. And, you know, I'll take your word for it. You said that cleared the crossbars. That is better than I would have done, man. Bravo. Good for you,
It was ugly, but it got through. I promise it went through.
All that matters.
If true. Okay.
We split the uprights in practice.
Jesse Kirsch, thank you. Thank you so much for so many things. Bye.
Love the guy.
We'll be right back on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Finally this hour. It is Friday. That means it's time for your weekly can't miss list. This is a look at all the films, shows, music you got to see and hear this weekend. And our friend NBC News entertainment contributor Chris Witherspoon is here,
Good
also
morning.
CEO of Pop Viewers. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
It's
Happy
Friday.
Friday.
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
Long
It's a long
weekend. I'm
weekend.
ready.
It's so yay. I'm so here for it. And you're going to tell us what to watch. Let's start with
Yes.
1992.
Yes, this one is a crime thriller set during the LA riot. So it takes place during this real historical time in our country after the Rodney King verdict. It stars Tyrese Gibson, who plays a father trying to get his life back together, but also Ray Liotta, who recently passed away. It's one of his last film roles. On the Other Side of Town. It's kind of like Crash, the film Crash, where there's two storylines happening at once, but they kind of collide at the same time. Great film, lots of drama, also historical events that took place.
I feel like probably emotional, too,
Oh,
right?
yeah, very
Lots.
emotional. Also, Tyrese can bring the drama. To me, people sleep on him a little bit. He's a great actor. I've met him, interviewed him many times. Great guy.
Yeah. Okay, great. Wow. I mean, it sounds like what a plot. Okay, now let's talk about this new AI movie, Afraid, right? Afraid, and you know there's an A and an I next to each other there. What do we think about this one? It's giving me Megan vibes.
It's a psychological thriller. It stars a guy named John Cho, who is a dad who gets this AI assistant. Her name is Aya. There's these eyes around the apartment, around the home. But basically, Aya gets very messy. She used to be a little bit too good as an assistant, so it's very scary. It's kind of a cautionary tale around where we're going right now with AI, but it's brilliant. Also kind of like not too scary. It's like one of those, the show Black Mirror. It's like a Black Mirror episode that plays out over a film.
Okay, love that. Oh,
Yes.
I really want to see this one. Okay, if we're staying in this weekend, there is something new to stream, right? A documentary here?
It's Gary. It's about Gary Coleman. I grew up watching Different Strokes. What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah,
That's what he says? Yeah. But it's really about how he battled this rare health condition, but also the ups and downs. He suffered alcoholism, drug abuse, just all the craziness that he went through and how he kind of came out on the other side. A lot of never before seen interviews, his parents, just a lot of great cast members as well.
And where can you watch that?
You can watch this one on Peacock.
Peacock. Okay, streaming, you can catch it at home. Okay, also, big weekend for Lord of the Rings fans.
Yes, Lord of the Rings. So many folks, I watched this show. It's called The Rings of Power. It's on Prime. Grab your rings. It's time to head back to Middle Earth. But it's the sequel or the second season of this show that was on Prime Video. Amazon spent $700 million on this series. So folks are excited for it. It's very luxe. It's very big, but it's Lord of the Rings. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think fans love this show, right?
Yes, and you can watch episode 1, 2, and 3. They're all out right now.
Oh, love it. Okay, this next one is being called one of the best retellings of Greek mythology.
Yes.
This sounds awesome.
It's called Chaos. To me, Jeff Goldblum is the headline. He stars as Zeus. It's these three characters who basically realize that they have this common connection, but it's kind of taking Greek mythology and turning it on its head.
Wait, and so it's like set in modern?
Yeah, it's set in modern time, but it's like Greek mythology again, turning it on its head. Jeff Goldblum, he plays Zeus. He's paranoid. He's hilarious. He's very neurotic. It's a great, I think, retelling of Greek mythology.
We love it. Chris Witherspoon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We got the whole
So
thing,
fun.
everything we're watching. We love it. Also, before we head to break right now on Morning News Now, it is the last day for one of the superstars of this team, Laurel, before she heads on maternity leave. There she is in the control room right there. Look at her. Look at this boss lady. Look at all those buttons in front of her. She's controlling our whole show, doing everything every day for all of us. Her and her husband, Dylan, are about to welcome their first baby. And she's heading off on maternity leave. Laurel, we love you. We cannot wait. Congratulations. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.